Hello and welcome to God Gave Rock and Roll to You, a podcast exploring the Christian rock subculture of the late 20th century. My name is Matt Beaton, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Doug Dickens and Tony Hormiosa. We are friends who each grew up in a distinct version of this world, and we want to discuss what it was, where it came from, and what it turned into. We'll be taking many side roads along the way while listening to some of the best and worst music of the era. In this episode, we discuss the music of Michael Knott, who passed away on March 12th. He was a highly prolific musician and label owner who fronted many bands, including Lifesavers, Lifesavers Underground, L.S. Underground, L.S.U, Cush, Bombay Babies, and more. He also released many solo albums under his own name. For the three of us, he's important as the main force behind Blonde Vinyl Records. For a couple of glorious years in the early 90s, he somehow bypassed the Christian music industry's gatekeepers and convinced Christian bookstores to stock his label's releases. These included bands with original music styles and lyrics which were pointedly human, dark, and complicated, but still grounded in faith. For us, he represents the beginning of the breakdown of the wall between Christian and secular music, and opened new roads for artists expressing their faith through art outside of the tightly controlled Christian music industry. We'll miss you, Mike.
So I thought it was a pretty interesting thread we had going on because there was a lot of there's a brief period of mourning and then this digging into catalog and then being oh, actually these are the albums that I glom onto and the other ones I'm not really into. At least that was my experience. And then what I read of you guys sharing seemed like kind of you felt the same way.
Yeah, but how much of that do you think is objective, or how much of it do you think is nostalgic for a certain time of your life? You know, I'm kind of grappling with that with a lot of the stuff we're listening to now. I mean, there's because we're talking about it. There's stuff we're listening to that I haven't listened to since I was 17. I literally hadn't listened to Swirling Eddie since I was in high school until a couple weeks ago, whatever. So it's all coming back, and I love that stuff, but it's you love anything you listen to and you discover when you're 17, that doesn't necessarily mean it's objectively great art. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's just music in general, right?
Yeah, because if I played Michael Knott to some dude friend of mine who doesn't understand the context, I don't know that he's going to be oh, this is really cool, or if he's going to be what is this?
Yeah. It's funny. I had a friend, my buddy that I played in a band with in Brooklyn, who moved to Tokyo. And he's big into music. He's super into punk rock. And I was listen, there's this band I want you to listen to. And it was Fluffy. Listen, tell me what you think. And I put on, I can't remember what song I put on, but he listened to it for about maybe 45 seconds. It was yeah, dude, I'm not into it. He's no, dude.
All my fortresses are gone. Fancy, what you doing to me? Fancy, why don't you look at me? Fancy.
I was thanks for telling me that, because I'm kind of wrapped up in this band because their other album was really raw. It was really, when he said yeah, this doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
I was hey, thanks for telling me that, because I'm all wrapped up in my timeline and where I was when I heard this, and I don't have any sense of objectivity.
And that doesn't mean all music is subjective to some extent. I mean, I think,
Yeah, but I trust this guy to have a head outside of my own, and to be pretty open-minded when it comes to music. I guess I should have pursued why he didn't like it, but yeah.
Right. I'm trying to remember the first exposure I had to Mike Knott stuff. I mean, I think that Blind Vinyl definitely was the record label of choice. When I'd go to the Living Vine or whatever, I would seek out whatever was on Blind Vinyl and just try to buy it, because I knew that anything on it was going to be interesting and cool. And the fact that Mike Knott and that now that I got to read, the liner notes. So basically, just a preface for people that are listening, there's liner notes in the Great Prophet vinyl reissue that are print liner notes that I don't think exist online anywhere. So it's really the complete history of, Mike Knott and Blind Vinyl and how he got it started. I can't find anything of this depth online, anywhere.
I couldn't either. No.
So in that interview with Chris Colbert, didn't he?
He talks about a little bit of it, yeah.
Because Michael Knott started it, and he wanted to just flood the zone with a bunch of records. So.
Right. So I think he paid Chris Colbert $10,000 to record 10 records in like a month. And so that's all those records just came out like boom, 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 boom.
And Breakfast with Amy's on that, right?
And Fluffy. And the only reason they did Fluffy was it wasn't even a real band. They just like did it to fulfill the 10 record like recording deal.
Oh, that's interesting. So we met Chris Colbert at a show, and he was wearing a Fluffy shirt. It was a black shirt, had an American flag, but all the stars were like Fluffies. And we talked to him for a little bit, and I was like, he was like, oh yeah, because I handed him that Pop Life record. Was it Pop Life or Pop?
Pop Life.
Pop Life.
Pop Life, like CD to sign. He's like, dude, we recorded and engineered that in a day or something like
right.
that. And
they were like toss-offs.
Yeah, he wrote
that
on
was
that
the Lifesavers.
Yeah.
Before the Underground.
With the surfers on the cover.
Yeah.
But well, it was released after like L.S.U. had done This Is the Healing, I think.
Does that have Surf With God on it?
Yeah, it had Surf With God and My Skateboard Is No Crime.
Right. Right.
It had some fun songs on there, like Queen of the Captive, I think, was on there, which I thought was a pretty poppy, cute song. But anyway, Colbert signed my CD and was like, we recorded this in one day or something like that,
really?
like 3 hours or something.
You still have that?
It's either with Tony in my parents' garage or in a stack of CDs.
I think I have that. That's...
I
just know that I can't listen to any CDs because I don't have a CD player. I have a cassette player now.
I saw it. Eat your tape.
Right.
But you know what that picture reminded me of was the Mind Size album cover by Poor Old Lou, which was a band that kind of popped out after you got out of like.
I remember Poor Old Lou, and it's probably because they were on that Browbeats compilation. That may have been the last Christian album I bought, was that Browbeats compilation.
Oh yeah.
Well, I say that, but then I was digging through my CDs and I just found the Prayer Chain album. And that was in 95.
Mercury,
so I was like, man, I was still buying Christian records in 95. I didn't know that.
I might have given that to you, man. Because I got
you were trying to save my soul because you thought I was an atheist at the point.
I was trying to have a friend who listened to Christian.
Well, you told me that you came to see me in College Station and you came away convinced I was an atheist, or you were worried about my soul or something.
So,
I mean, I'm always worried about your soul, Matt, because I'm the gatekeeper.
It's true.
The album A Kiss of Life is the first record I got of Michael Knott. So that was the Lifesavers.
Right, that was in mid 80s when that came out.
And that's the band that was already there before he had joined it, right?
So the Lifesavers started in 83 with that, like the preacher John Wimber, his son started the Lifesavers as like an evangelistic rock band, and then Mike Knott joined it, and then he ended up taking it over and rebranding it, and then it didn't want to be preaching anymore.
And then wrote Shaded Pain and
right.
But I'm amazed at how much. So those are all second generation out of the Jesus Revolution.
Yeah, they come right out of the Calvary Chapel. I mean, there's that story on that podcast where Mike Knott's talking about how he got kicked out of Calvary Chapel for like doing backflips on stage, and he joked that he had to meet with Chuck Smith, and I don't know if that was a joke or real, but like that all came out of Calvary Chapel. Like, and yeah, they were the sons.
Smith?
Chuck Smith is the founder of Calvary Chapel in the 60s, who was
the
convinced.
guy who was on acid?
No, he was convinced by, what's his name? The guy who was on acid, the hippie.
Lonnie Frisbee.
Lonnie Frisbee. Yeah, so if you've watched the Jesus Revolution movie, which is starring Kelsey Grammer, which I saw half of and turned it off.
Really?
But yeah. Oh, yeah. it tells the story of he plays Chuck Smith, and it's interesting because it's a whitewashed version of that history. But Chuck Smith was a pretty conservative evangelical pastor in Orange County in the mid '60s, late '60s, and his daughter. I'm going to probably get the facts wrong, but his daughter started. She brought home this boyfriend, Lonnie Frisbee, who was like a total hippie. He disapproved of him, but they sort of started talking to each other. Yada, yada, yada. Lonnie Frisbee has an acid trip and sees Jesus and becomes a convert, becomes Christian. And then Chuck Smith basically takes Lonnie Frisbee into his church, starts inviting all the hippies into his church, starts the Jesus movement, starts the whole sort of Christian rock scene around that church.
Okay.
And all the people we talk about all the time, the reason all this stuff comes out of Orange County is because it was all centered around Calvary Chapel.
And let's have a quick Blonde Vinyl quiz question for which I have no answer.
Go.
Name as many Blonde Vinyl bands as you can. And I'm going to start with an obscure one to help us out.
Okay.
Steve Scott's poetry album, The Butterfly Effect.
I think I had that. That's in those tapes.
So there you go. Steve Scott. There's one.
Oh, Breakfast with Amy.
Okay, let me write these down. Okay.
L.S.U. I'm cheating. L.S.U. of course.
Are you looking it up?
No, I'm not looking it up. But I don't.
Saying L.S.U.
Fluffy.
All right. Sincerely Paul.
What?
Remember them?
I remember the name. I don't remember.
Wasn't post-punk Amy Grant on there?
Post-punk Amy Grant, definitely on there. Dude, when you said post-punk Amy Grant, I had like a weird sexual fantasy.
That's messed up, dude. You need to check your heart.
Like that's the hottest thing I've ever. If we can get some AI to set up some post-punk Amy Grant, I'm going to have my own little like subcult. Like I'm going to have a little file on my computer that no one's going to know about.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are more. Was Lust Control on Blonde Vinyl?
No, Mike Knott was too cool for Lust Control. Those guys are fucked up, man.
They couldn't control their lust.
Anyway, Blonde Vinyl. I don't. I think I'm out. I don't think I can remember any other ones.
I
was just telling about how obsessed I was with this label, and I can't remember any.
All right, so I've got Steve Scott, L.S.U, BW, Breakfast with Amy, Fluffy, Sincerely Paul, which
what did they sound like?
Remembers.
Oh,
I don't remember
that.
But I had their record, and it was like there were a couple songs that were good, but I met a guy who actually promoted Mike Knott concerts in North Carolina or South Carolina. And he was huge into Sincerely Paul. And he was like, do you remember like all the rat sounds at the beginning of the album? Like rats like fighting and eating each other. And I'm like, I don't, but you must really like this record.
Meant a lot to you, apparently.
You remember this stuff. Okay. Oh, Wendy Liar.
Isn't that Mike Knott's wife?
I had that record.
You did?
Yeah. We talked about that, Tony. She's putting out other stuff now. I looked her up, and she's on.
Oh, really?
I think she's on Bandcamp, and yeah. Okay, who else? Black and White World.
Oh, I had that.
What did that sound like?
I can't even
remember. Like Dancy?
Well, Dance House Children.
Is this the Christian rock misinformation segment of the show?
Probably, but. Right. Fact check me. So Dance House Children was on Blonde Vinyl.
Yes, I knew that there was a Blonde Vinyl connection because Mike Knott tried to start Tooth and Nail with Brandon Abel and then somehow did not make it through that transition. So he was quickly out of Tooth and Nail, and Brandon Abel went and created Tooth and Nail. But Mike Knott was around for the beginning of that in some way that I can't quite understand.
Dance House Children was Jason Martin and what was his brother's name?
Yeah. So how many bands we got now on the Blonde Vinyl tally?
9. Steve Scott, L.S.U, Breakfast with Amy, Fluffy, Sincerely Paul, Lifesavers Underground as a separate band.
I think we're really, really narrowing our audience now.
Yeah.
Down to
They're
Sorry,
like 3 people.
they're dropping like flies.
and all 3 of them are like, you guys don't have your facts straight at all.
We didn't really know. Like, how could we get information about Ben?
I know.
I didn't know anything about where,
No, I didn't know anything about anything. I mean, I literally walked into the record store. I would see a cool looking, I don't even remember how we got into it. Like, I would just see a CD with a cool cover and it said Blonde Vinyl, and I would buy it. And then we would talk about it, and then we'd go find out what else was on that label. That's why I was with Brainstorm Artists. That's why I was with Alarma, with Broken Records. Like, I just kind of trusted that anything on those labels were going to be interesting at the very least. And like, when you don't have a lot of discernment when you're 15 or whatever, so you just buy it all up as much as you can afford. And that becomes the soundtrack to your life, I don't know, for better, for worse.
All right. Here's another question. Are you ready? All right. So you've been listening to Mike Knott this week.
Yeah.
What's a song that stood out to you?
Oh man, like anything on Rocket on a Bomb, like Jan the Weatherman.
Jan, he's the weatherman. Looks like a product of the Manson gang. I asked him about his past one day. Nearly lost my life that way.
Was probably the standout.
Stands out to you? What stands out to you about that song?
Well, just the structure of, the rhyme. I mean, it's like kind of the sing-song rhyming, but it's very clever in how he's like stitches the phrases together and how he tells the story in a very like small amount of words, and you get a complete picture of this guy. And
what's a line that stands out to you that you can think of right now?
Man, now I'm gonna have to look up the lyrics.
Hey, Tony, did Matt tell you that we played out as like buskers in Deep Ellum one night in '94, just doing Michael Knott covers?
No.
We did. We played Kitty Courtesy
over and over.
Yeah.
Over and over. Yeah. And then like people came around.
Yeah, we drew like a small crowd. It was great.
So Christ for the Nation you had to go do a ministry if you went to school there. So you had to participate in a ministry, and they had a deep. Did you
go down to Deep Ellum like carrying a cross?
Yeah, and for those outside of Dallas, Deep Ellum is the club district of Dallas.
Right.
Those guys that would go down there, they were the annoying ones. Like if you go down and people are passing out tracts and trying to distract you from having fun,
trying to save sinners.
Those guys, yeah.
So one of the lyrics, the line of Jan the Weatherman that I like the most is, once a month, a big fat man walks out of Jan's door, comes back 20 minutes later with 100 sandwiches or more. And I said, hey, Jan, what's this all about? Jan just says, shh, I don't want to get kicked out.
Once a month, the big fat man walks out of Jan's door. Comes back 20 minutes later with 100 sandwiches or more. I said, hey, Jan, what's this all about? Jan just says, shh, I don't want to get kicked out.
That's amazing.
Like Mike Knott says, that's a real. Like, these are all stories. So this is off of Rocket and a Bomb, and every one of these songs is a different character that he knew in Hollywood when he lived in an apartment like on Sunset Boulevard in the 80s. These are like real people. So Kitty Courtesy was another one who was, somebody they suspected of killing her husband and cooking him.
Kitty Courtesy, won't you please show me what's in the pot? Kitty Courtesy, smells kinda human. Tell me that it's not. She never lets me in whenever she's cooking. Don't you find that kind of been disappeared. I'm getting chives. It's coming down the hall. It's seeping through my wall. Stop that cooking, please. What's cooking, kitty? Smells kinda human. Ooh, I'm about to bomb it. Please tell me that it's not.
Like these are like real things. It's just
Tony, you like this album too, right?
The last one I bought, I know, was I'm the one with "I'm No Christ" on it.
It came out in '94.
Screaming Brittle Siren.
I listened to it today, and it's a really good record.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
I think it's better than. I bought the first two records, first Lifesavers, and then L.S.U. Shaded Pain, and those still hold. I mean, I was listening to them today. I'm like, oh, I can listen to these. It's like the quality of the recording is good. The production, is good, and then the songs are good. I mean, and that first Lifesavers, according to Spotify, was done in 1985. So he was doing, this post-punk sound along with a lot of other bands at that time. It was a new sound, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think there's this idea that if you're a Christian doing music, you're automatically aping somebody else.
Right.
But I mean, he's in Huntington Beach. He's in LA. He's in the mix. So like,
he's influenced, by what everyone else is influenced.
Yeah.
Like
a lot of other secular musicians.
Like at the same time, like it's not like he's just coming in 2 years late,
Yeah. I think Mike Knott was pretty, I don't think he was derivative. Maybe in This Is the Healing, but I was super into Sisters of Mercy at the time and then found This Is the Healing. And that was like really gothy sounding, but This Is the Healing doesn't sound as round to me in its peaks and troughs as Floodland does. But I think he was going for the same thing. He had that super deep voice, which he like really utilized. He had some like really crunchy guitar coming in. He had that drum machine, tons of reverb on it. And I thought that there were some I thought not only did it have a sound that I wanted, because I really like Sisters of Mercy, and then here's this guy who like had Jesus on his record cover, and I like bought it because I found that picture of Jesus. It's that mosaic or whatever from, I feel like it's from Turkey, but I don't know. He's got, his two fingers up teaching. I found that record cover so compelling, and I was like, this is going to suck, but I love the record cover. So but there's some really beautiful things going on in that record. I still think the words of This Is the Healing are beautiful. Like Jesus, like GGG, Jesus. That one, that's pretty violent. And it actually like feels like one of the Crucified songs to me, where he talks about killing the devil or whatever.
One day I'd like to kill the KKK. Hang them from the cross they burn today. With the killing of a bigot, let me win. Sometimes I'm as sick as him. Jesus. Give me love. Jesus. Give me understanding.
Anyway, but there's a line in that album where he's like, "Are you tired, hungry? Are you cold? Are you looking for the dun 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 dun? And I feel like it's on.
Oh yeah.
Are you tired of the heartbreak? Or are you looking for the break on tomorrow? Are you tired of the love you cold? Are you begging for a free motto? Are you living in the heartstring gold? Are you looking for a heart tomorrow? Yeah, living in the heartstring gold. Are you looking for the brick on the mountain?
It's those breakdown over layering things that I really like about Mike Knott. And actually, I was going over Screaming Brittle Siren today, and I was listening to that song Liars, and he does the same type thing where he's got these over layering, competing kind of lines. That is the Mike Knott that I love, is that kind of saying two things at once, that they're not, opposing each other, but just having those layers of lyricism.
So Tony, your favorite Mike Knott related project, or the one that you were listening to the most when you were a kid, was what? And that was the 80s one, the Lifesavers one?
The Shaded Pain?
No, it was so I bought the first one.
Kiss of Life?
Yeah.
I listened to that the other day, and like the first track is really great, but then it sort of lost me because I wasn't familiar with it as a kid. So I'm trying to my only connection to it is now, and I'm just kind of like,
we call that the fluffy effect.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was that was so different from anything, including the choir, that I was listening to in Christian music. So it kind of stood out.
Right.
Like these guys are doing stuff that's more, we've talked about this before, more English or British. Right. I mean, they're super simple songs, but I could still listen to it. And now I'm like, can I listen to it because it's nostalgic, or
right?
And it took me back to that time.
Yeah. That's the whole question I've had through this whole thing. It's just like, is this good, or is it just good? I mean, anything you get, I mean, those years between your like 15 and 20 or whatever, whatever you're listening to in those years are going to just melt into your brain for your life. I mean, like
this record that I listened to the other day, Grace Shaker, that's a really well produced record.
So what's the best song on that album?
Just on my first listen, I would say Double.
Next thing you know, you wake up at home and the little one there won't leave you alone. She's awake and hungry, she needs some potty help. And you remember what happened last time she tried it by herself, and your wife says, hurry, we're late for church. And you can barely see, and your head still hurts, and the preacher starts preaching, and you feel remorse. He's got 5 little kids and a big divorce, and your wife looks down and says she don't know how he's been her guiding light for 10 years now, and his marriage is over, it's barely alive. And how in the world will ours ever survive? And the stool falls over when you sit back down. It bumps a mean pool shooter from across the town. He misses his shot and it's all on you. With your last $4, you know what you'll do. Sorry man, can I buy you a drink? And he shakes his head and says, make it a double.
I still think Screaming Brittle Siren, for me, of all the Mike Knott projects, I mean, Rockin' on a Bomb's amazing. It's hard for me not to put that one as my number one, but I really like Screaming Brittle Siren. I think it's got.
I should listen to it again. It's just been a long time, but I mean, I just listened to I Am No Christ today, so that's the one that's
great.
That's like the cello in that. I mean,
yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah, that's so good.
The shimmer, the pseudo is tarnished when the bird is mocking. The glory of the man in holding is for the pseudo Cross me once and I'll forgive you. Cross me twice and it gets hard. Cross me 3 times, just remember I'm no Christ. I'm no Christ. Am I the animal? Am I the enemy?
I think if we're going to talk about, for me, Michael Knott represents the contradiction openly. You know, there's this conflict, this open conflict with his faith,
right,
that he represents in song, which is an honest reflection of wherever he was when he was recording, which you didn't get a lot of that. You know, I think a lot of people just kind of layered lyrics that were not representative of where they were. It was just like, we're going to talk about how good things can be or how good things are. Because
how good I am. Right.
Yeah.
No, so that's true.
That's what I appreciated about Michael Knott. It was like, you knew there was an honesty to his songwriting that you just didn't see. And it's similar to Pedro the Lion, right?
Right. And I think he may have been the first person to do that at that level in the Christian music.
I don't know. Gene Eugene, I feel like Gene Eugene was doing that.
Yeah, he did that too.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I responded more. I had a better response to those type of artists back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's not like I was struggling with my faith. It's just...
But you're a human being.
Yeah, we struggle with life, right? Yeah. And faith is a part of our life. So
I think I struggled with the church for me.
But I mean, and the church, yeah.
But these guys, like, especially, I mean, Terry Taylor, we're going to talk about in a future episode. But like Mike Rowe from the 77s, I still want to talk about them. I mean, I don't know how much you guys are familiar with the 77s. I'm probably a bigger fan than you guys are of them. But like, I think Mike Rowe was doing a lot of that. But like, the whole common thread is that these guys were human beings, but they're still have this like core of faith, you know. Yeah. That's kind of unshakable, and their faith is based on grace.
But reading some of the Mike Knott interviews recently, like the one that was done with the NPR guy, what was Lars? I can't remember his last name. Mm-hmm. He was saying that
was a great article about him.
Yeah, and Mike Knott had that quote where he's like, a lot of people like live this straight and narrow life. They don't really live. They don't drink. They don't smoke. They don't blah blah blah, and then they like fall apart.
Right.
And so when I was listening to Shaded Pain just today, I wrote down a couple lines. And one was, how can we be forgiven if we don't live our lives? And I thought that was such a beautiful line, because how many people do you know who are like, as long as I live within these boundaries,
stay within the lines. Yeah.
Right. God's got to let me in.
Man, I was just talking to Shoshana, my wife, about this. How I think we need to be, because we're cool parents.
So
we're not raising them the way we were raised. Right. So then I was telling her, well, they don't have anything to rebel against.
Right.
So they're not going to have this, you know, is that going to affect their identity and like their sense of individuality? So I think we're just going to make up rules.
Just so they have something to rebel against.
So what band do you love that they don't like? Like, you guys cannot listen to John Coltrane. Like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
None.
Don't do it.
If I see a John Coltrane record in the house,
I'm going to break it.
Eat it.
Grounded for a month.
Okay, maybe break it. Okay. Well, there were a couple other lines for that song that I thought were really good. And one was, we throw off all the shackles and then we wear the chains. Like, that's Christianity in America to a T.
Oh, yeah.
Saying you're free, and then like you have to do
weighing yourself down with all this bullshit. Right.
And then the other one was we find out who we are, and then we lose the chains. I thought that was good.
Yeah,
at the end there, but yeah, I don't know, a lot of those lines in that song, and the piano in there. And Tony, this is going to be really, really snobby sounding, but it reminded me of that Bella Union band, the Divics. Do you remember that band?
They're really good, yeah.
Yeah, they're super good. Oh, I thought the piano tones on Shaded Pain was a lot like Divics.
What's a Divics? What's a Divics track I could play? Because I haven't heard of those guys.
Oh man, Heaven Please. The way the piano sounds, it almost sounds like the mic's pulled far away. It's got this weird, like, and I haven't listened to that Divic song for a while, but when I was listening to Shaded Pain, I was like, oh, I'm getting the same kind of vibes from that.
So I'm just looking at some stuff up.
That Great Prophet was maybe one of your favorites of him.
Yeah, and so Screaming Brutal Siren, Great Prophet, Rockin' at a Bomb, and Pop Life. Those are probably the 4 Mike Knott related projects that I'm most familiar with like a little bit of Waking Up the Dead. But just in the last week since he's passed away, I've been kind of doing a whole retrospective. So Screaming Brutal Siren, amazing, holds up. Rockin' at a Bomb blows my mind. I still think that's probably now that I used to think Great Prophet was my favorite, but I think Rockin' at a Bomb is probably my favorite work that he's done. As far as just like artistic integrity, like he just as a document of something that he experienced in his life and just pure art. Great Prophet is like a rock opera, basically. It's like it's a concept album, which is really cool. I had no idea what he was talking about.
Because we played Travels.
Which one's Travels?
Oh
yeah, we did, didn't we?
We played the instrumental Pool Lake.
Instrumental one, yeah.
And then we played Crash and Burn from Screaming Brutal Siren. But yeah. And I feel like we wanted to play another one. Maybe Alice in the Orchard, but I can't remember if we actually played that one.
I think we did play Alice in the Orchard.
Yeah, that was you on guitar because I couldn't get the singing and guitaring down, and also I was the drummer.
Right. You're too busy drumming.
Did you only play Michael Knott songs?
No, we didn't have a lot of originals. We played a fluffy song. Well, we played Jesse's Girl, the fluffy version of Jesse's Girl.
Right, the cover of the cover. But then Matt had a couple songs that we played.
Yeah, I played a couple terrible originals that I wrote.
What are you wanting to get out of this Mike Knott episode that you haven't got out of it?
So, hypothesis about Michael Knott is that he was the bridge between CCM and sort of the cloistered, controlled. I'm even talking about his access to the Christian bookstores and then how that stuff that he made on blonde vinyl got disseminated to people that were teenagers like us in those days. If it wasn't for the record deals that he made and the deals that he made and the stuff that he recorded with $10,000 with Chris Colbert and all that stuff, like none of that stuff would have made it into the stores. And that affected my life. It affected my musical tastes and affected my kind of journey and progression into other forms of music. And I'm sure it did to a lot of other kids that were whose only source of, entertainment or media was the Christian bookstore. And so I feel like Michael Knott is the figure that represents the transition from like safe yacht rock CCM. Cause I was listening to like Steve Camp and like, Michael W. Smith and stuff. And then like found his stuff. And then that was the gateway into kind of opening my mind up and my world up to lots of other things. And so I think he's the guy that kind of, and we talk about like how CCM kind of died after 2000 and became the tooth and nail era. And since he was right at the cusp of that transition between old school 80s and 90s CCM and what became like tooth and nail and the blurring of the lines between Christian and secular music. So that's my theory. What do you think about that?
I could see that. He kind of Christianized cool, right? Like, but it wasn't like trite, and it wasn't forced. It was real. Like he's like a real artist. It was honest,
right?
Because he was singing about. He had an honest approach to his songwriting.
I mean, I could go to a Christian bookstore and get Screaming Brutal Siren or Rocket and a Bomb, and there's a song on there that says, "Someone get me a gun, someone get me a shotgun. I want to end it if I can't have my baby."
Someone get me a gun, someone get me a shotgun. I want to end it if I can't have my baby. Someone get me a gun, someone get me a shotgun. I wanna end it if I can't learn to supply.
Like,
what song is that on?
I gotta look it up, but it's just like that's on Rocket and a Bomb. It's just like there's some like dark shit on his records that like are very, very human, and it would never have passed any sort of screening of, you know, the Christian gatekeepers of, you know, the Nashville scene or whatever. Like, I don't know how he did it, but
his I think one of his records was banned in Christian bookstores.
I thought it was Shaded Pain, according to those liner notes. I thought it was that early one, Shaded Pain.
Yeah. So that's why I probably didn't see it until 1989 or 90 in a Christian bookstore. I bought that at a Christian bookstore.
Right. I reached out to a friend of mine who was a super into Christianity and like was a Christian punk and all this, and he was like, yeah, that shit, because, you know, Mike Knott died, and sent him that article, and he was like, man, Shaded Pain was my favorite album in that era of my life. Just like unbridled honesty. And
I mean, I remember listening to that. It was a long time ago, so it's hard to remember, but I was just trying to conjure up the feelings I had at that time when I bought that record. From looking back at it, it was something completely different. Like I said earlier, like it was not the choir. It was just different from, I don't know what you call it, alternative Christian rock. But from that perspective, it was just different. And that's what stood out, you know, to me about that, even the first Lifesavers record.
Right.
And then Shaded Pain was a little darker. And I just thought, oh, okay, this is Lifesavers Underground is the darker version, the Bauhaus version of Lifesavers. I could totally see that. And I think that's why he's such he's a well-respected musician and just human being within the Southern California Christian rock scene.
Right.
You know, along with Mike Rowe and
that's the other thing is just like
Taylor.
And that whole idea that scene came out of one church and one movement and lasted for a few decades and morphed into, you know, the different styles of music between like the late 60s and probably arguably through the 90s. Really all came out of one community, you know?
Yeah, there was something going on down there where I think it was just the churches were open because of the Jesus movement in the 70s. They were open to all kinds of music and different interpretations of music.
Right.
Compared to the church in the South. So that's a whole other discussion. Like, you know, I feel like when I think of Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith, I think of Nashville. I think of Southern Christianity. And, but they had something completely different out there.
But there's something in the water and something in the time and something in that. I mean, I just watched the documentary Echo in the Canyon. Have you seen that one? It's about like the late 60s.
Yeah.
It's Jacob Dylan like did it, and he's like interviewing all the people from the late '60s, like Brian Wilson and the Mamas and the Papas and the Birds and all that stuff, and like just documenting a 2-year period in the Laurel Canyon Valley about all the great music that was made.
Yeah.
Like they all hung out at each other's houses, and like all the great albums that came out of that, like in a 2-year period in this scene in Southern California.
There was a lot of different styles. Like, Frank Zappa lived there.
Right. But it's this melting, like Southern California in the late '60s was like this melting, or California in general was just like this melting pot of all that culture just blossomed and came out of that area, and like in a very short period of time. And the Jesus movement was just sort of like an offshoot of that, but it's definitely related, Yeah, but when you have a whole community of people trying to do the same thing and trying to kind of one up each other, and that's kind of what Echo in the Canyon is talking about. Like they would just go to each other's houses. Like Jackson Browne would be there writing a song, and or the Birds were like competing with the Beatles, and like they're just like they'd hear this stuff, and like Brian Wilson would come in with something, they'd be like, "Oh shit!" and like we got to up our game, and they would. It's almost like it's like this cauldron of just trying to just get better and better and better at this stuff. And I feel like there's a microcosm of that with what we're calling this whole like Gene Eugene Green Room kind of post Calvary Chapel stuff that happened with all those guys, and Terry Taylor and Mike Rowe and all that stuff were a part of that. But it's just like there was a definitely community of people that I can sort of envy, because they're kind of regionally based. They're based out of this movement that came out of a certain time and place, and they feel like they kind of honed each other because they all worked on each other's projects. Like Mike Knott, Mike Rowe, Gene Eugene, all these guys that were like working together on each other's projects. Ojo Taylor. So it's just like the more they did that, the better they all got. I feel like that community created this music,
and I think that's because there was an openness to just music, and the music as an expression of your faith, right, as an honest expression of your faith.
We'll have to end it here for now. There's a lot to cover here, and we plan on getting through all of it. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to find out about future episodes. And we want to hear from you. Please write in and tell us what you think. Thanks for listening.